Hello.
Hello. So incognito, maybe part four, but because we screwed up a little, so we start all over again now. Again, Über Musik sprechen, part three.
We're
Merci. Now your
talking
turn
music,
in
number
English.
three.
Okay, so Merci.
Okay,
Archival Records.
this is Archival Records and archive records, special records, recordings that have never been released, uh, alternate versions, maybe outtakes. Uh, I am cheating a little bit because, according to my friend, the archivist, just putting out a reissue of a record with a bunch of extra tracks does not make it an archival release in theory. But we're trying to expand on this a little bit because I think you like to see some of these issues that are coming out. So it's not specific, just a remastered record. It's not what this is about. And it's not box sets like Michael and I have done in the past. Um, how do you see archival releases?
Yeah, you're right. It's not such a small topic. It's something that for my in my expectation of an archival record, it's not a record that is on the regular list of albums an artist has done. Maybe something like a lost tape that has been found, or live recording that has been done several years ago and now was declared as good, as very good. So let's put it out on vinyl, give it to the people. Um, the stuff which is a bit off topic, or when it comes to artists like Bob Dylan, maybe you would like to go in this Bootleg series, or Joni Mitchell with a new archival series, those kind of stuff.
And
Or
you know, there could be things like field recordings and Alan Lomax and the early blues and roots music, jazz, obviously. You know, when you stop and initially think of archival, you think of something way back from the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s that they dug up and they just found 50 years later or something, which is the case on some of these recordings we're going to show. Sometimes they're just, you know, undiscovered tapes or things that have been revealed that were thrown away or archived or alternate versions. And so I'm expanding on this list and cheating as I usually do, just because I think people like to see that. So I think the
yeah,
first
but
one, yeah.
Messi, why cheating? No, not cheating. In a way, every vinyl, every CD, every book is an archive in a way.
Well,
Whenever you
I
have
mean,
data.
you could get in this whole deep dark well of
Yeah.
a hole of talking about archival things and dusting things off, and one like preserving a specific object, a found object, and creating an archive where whether it's the Bob Dylan archive in Tulsa or the Smithsonian Museum or the Museum of Recording Arts and Sciences or uh, all these different type of archival uh, ways of preserving things that have been lost or kind of not specifically intentionally always discarded, but things do turn up sometimes. And my first album is something that actually turned up, and it's one album that it's been all over shown already. In fact, you and I both probably together and individually have shown it, and that's the Monk in Palo Alto. And this is a recording from 1968 that was unearthed by Danny Scherer, who was a high school student who produced this show in his high school in Palo Alto, California, right near Stanford University. And it was recording. The janitor asked to record the show, and he did a quarter-inch recording of it. And it was just unearthed, went through litigation and negotiations, because Monk used to be on this Columbia, Sony Records, and Impulse finally got the rights to this. And it is a brilliant performance. It's not a high-end audiophile recording by any stretch, but I think to me, it's the best archival release of 2020 when we're recording this video.
Yeah.
And what's great about it, it not only does it archive the music, but it archives the high school program with advertising from neighborhood businesses and shops, where they would ads for music stores and insurance firms and things like that. Has a lovely booklet talking about the recording, how it was found and worked on, and the great story of history with Danny Shearer and the other people involved, and of course the poster from the show. So I think it's an amazing set.
It is, and I totally agree. This is the archival release of 2020, no doubt about it. Gorgeous one, gorgeous one. But within the last couple of days, there has been, in my opinion, another archival release which is not much behind this Monk release, and this is Ella Fitzgerald, The Lost Berlin Tapes. And for me as a German, of course, this is in a way a very special recording, because it took place in Berlin, and it took place in '62, you know, Berlin, the war, the communism. And when somebody like Ella Fitzgerald comes to Berlin, for the Berlin people, that was for sure something very, very, very special. And when you listen to this record, to this vinyl, the atmosphere, the happiness, the excitement of the audience really jumps over to Ella Fitzgerald and the outcome of this concert, and it's gorgeous. And again, I second what you said. Of course, not an audiophile recording, but it's not important if it doesn't have to be audiophile. It's a great document of its time. And we just can be happy that those kind of music is still available, or available again, or in this case, I think available for the first time.
I really want to hear that, because when I first saw that listed, I haven't gotten it yet, and I'm considering it. But as soon as I saw Ella in Berlin, I thought of this record. And this is not, I'm not showing this as an archival release, but this is the record when I was 20 years old, got me into Ella Fitzgerald. I heard How High the Moon and Mac the Knife at what ends this live performance on this, and the scatting. You know, one could argue that Ella's best records are her live records, although I love the songbooks and everything. She's backed by a 4-piece ensemble, and this is a stunning record.
Aren't those songbooks not also archival in a way? Of course they are.
No, yeah, well, I mean, they're records that have been in print on and off, and whether it's compact disc or vinyl, or whatever. What's great about this is 1962, so this is 2 years before that. And I didn't know if that recording was from the same set, so I'm dying to hear that.
The text they write about the edition you just showed. Ella Fitzgerald returned to Berlin, to the scene of one of her greatest recording triumphs, the Grammy Award-winning Mac the Knife, Ella in Berlin. So that is the record which was before, and this is the same. One
of the great live records of all time, and I'm really looking forward to checking that out. You start resisting as much as you can, and then you show something, and you say, "This is gorgeous." You don't say it like that. Sounds really bad. You can't even do the act. Anyway, forget it. I won't try to do no stab at humor for the time being. I'm going with a Renaissance recording. You can talk more about the label probably than I can. I don't know. Resonance out of Los Angeles are these found archival tapes. They've done Bill Evans, and I'm going to show Wes Montgomery album. This is Wes Montgomery is from Indiana, and these are early recordings in Indiana before he was signed to Prestige. And of course, the rest is history. What a great guitar player. These are the Carol DeCamp recordings, who was a piano player. And these are fabulous. Most of these are done on Record Store Day, although there are some others, like you showed the amazing Nat Cole box set, which is on Resonance. And I just love this. So this is an unearthed recording that had never been released up until last year. And I have number 1084 out of 3,000. So these are numbered.
I have one Resonance record and it's number 4,150 out of 3,000. Really, not kidding.
It must be the Polish pressing or something.
But you know who is very much into Wes Montgomery? Michael from Noted and Archived. He loves Wes Montgomery.
I love Wes Montgomery. I mean, ironically, see, you know, everything when it comes to Maslow here gets connected to the Beatles. And I think Wes Montgomery was the first jazz guitar player I heard or really listened to because of his version of A Day in the Life that was recorded, I'm thinking a month or two at the most after Sgt. Pepper came out. And of course, a couple months later, I think he died that year. Or am I thinking of, I can't remember if he died that year, but he recorded that version, a jazz version of Day in the Life very soon after, only months after Sgt. Pepper. So I got that record and it was like the first jazz record I got. And I didn't buy another jazz record probably for about 3 or 4 years, but what a great guitar player. I mean, you got to watch on vintage, on archival footage on YouTube of him playing. He's got this kind of rhythmy guitar sound, but you know, later he got into this double, you know, Michael, if Michael was here, he would be able to tell me what that kind of picking is, where he's doing these like, I was going to say tonal notes, octaves, various octaves of playing, almost like finger picking, but it's pretty amazing. Great sound.
Mezzi, those are very old recordings, aren't they? From late 40s to early 50s, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I don't have the exact date.
I think so.
Yeah, late 1950s.
Late 19. Oh, sorry.
Mid to late 50s, and he was from Indianapolis, and before he, you know, moved to New York.
You know who mastered this archival record?
Bernie Grundman.
Yeah, Bernie Grundman, and they put out quite some.
It sounds really good. I mean, it's a great sounding record, and I highly recommend it.
So maybe it's interesting for our viewers because those are big packages, some 2 records, 3 records, and they put out quite some from Wes Montgomery. And maybe this is a good alternative as a starting point. This is a single disc edition also from Resonance, and this is the best of all those editions they put out from.
I've never seen that. I love that cover.
Quite new. It's quite new. So if you don't want to go too deep in it and just try it out, so maybe the best of single disc edition is something to start with. Sorry, don't want to interrupt you. Just want to show it because of
that's it. Go ahead, pick something else out.
Okay, yeah. If we are with the resonance stuff, same, of course. A lot of discs they put out from Bill Evans. Also more archival stuff, and again, like the Wes Montgomery, here is a best of all their editions they did from Bill Evans. So if you want to be careful before going into it deep, those best of records may be of interest.
Absolutely, right. I'm going to, for those of you viewing, this is a little bit of a long video. We are going to show some rock and roll, at least I am. So it's not all jazz and archival things like that. But to me, one of the amazing records that have come out the last few years is from a tape they found from Carnegie Hall that the great Michael Kuskuna, who worked for Blue Note and who started Mosaic Records and worked on that. And it's a 1957 recording of Thelonious Monk quartet with John Coltrane. This is a fantastic, came out on compact disc and vinyl. This came out in, I think 3 or 4 years ago, this came out. And this was actually a big seller, considering it was a big surprise seller. And it came out in various configurations. But it's Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, Ahmed Abdul Malik, and Shadow Wilson. So just this great 4-piece at Carnegie Hall, recorded for the Voice of America originally. So it was probably from my guess from a radio transcript. I don't remember. Yeah, it's from a mono analog tape, but transferred. So it is digitally output, but it still sounds fantastic. And they really salvaged this in the last cut is a version of Epistrophe, which is incomplete. So a lot of some of these jazz things, especially when they're archival, you don't just put it out perfectly where it's the whole thing. Sometimes you've heard things where the tape runs out or the recording runs out and the song just ends. And this is a great collection, great set.
Yeah. Great. And now, you know Monty Python probably, huh? And now
I
for
think I've
something,
heard of them.
and now for something completely different.
A man with a tape recorder up his nose. I won't.
You know Nurse with Wound?
I do not know.
Maybe you know Current 93.
No.
No, okay.
Tell me.
Yeah, I'm trying, because this is this, you know, Throbbing Gristle, Current 93, Nurse with Wound.
Industrial noise.
Industrial neo-folk group, Nurse with Wound. And when they put out their first two records, they had a list of albums and artists who influenced them on their first two albums. On this list was, for example, Frank Zappa or Captain Beefheart, or very obscure bands from Spain, France, Germany, all over the place. Some of those they made up, and some of those really existed. And they had a huge fan base very quick. And this is the notorious Nurse with Wound list. And this is an edition from Finders Keepers. By the way, this album cover is very soft, very beautiful leather. And this is the Nurse with Wound list from artists they found and discovered and got songs. So, but only the French artists from the Nurse with Wound list. So this is an ongoing series. And in my opinion, this is archival also in a way, because those songs are really hard to get. Is it on tape or CD or whatever? They really have to dig deep to get those artists on a record. And this is a beautiful edition from Finders Keepers, with an inlay where they go through the artist. I can't say that it's highly recommended, because this thing was gone within minutes, because the fan base is so big of this Nurse with Wound. And that's, as I said, something completely different. Neo-folk, noise, industrial, but archival.
Absolutely archival. Yeah, I've never heard that in my entire life. And that's what's great. You know, the nice thing, I mean, you could say, you know, when you do an archive, there's a place you go to that showcases the archive, and archiving something is usually one object, a singular object. However, we're collecting, you know, you go back to the singular tapes or transcripts or whatever you have in whatever format, and you can make other copies of this. An archival original photograph, you know, there's archival photographs from the negative, and now there's all, you know, these photographs from digital files. Does that make it non-archival? Probably, but you know, it allows other people to have a piece of this in a weird way, in a commercial way. And I'm not going to, you know, say not commercial. My next pick is actually, God, I can't believe I'm doing I just realized, even though I picked this independently, I'm doing another Monk release, because Sam Records put this out. I know you have the box set version of it, I think. And did you pull it here? You probably have the box.
I thought about it, but
yeah.
When you do the Monk from Sam Records, I do this from Sam Records, so Nathan Davis.
And this is from the motion picture from, I think, late 50s, 1959, recorded in New York, but for the French film, basically, I won't say it in French, but the original version of Dangerous Liaisons. And the soundtrack of this is stunning. There's 10 tracks on here that I believe had never been released in any form. And it's got Charlie Rouse on tenor, Barney Wilson, Thelonious Monk, Sam Jones, and Art Taylor. Beautiful cover. And this is, I think this is still available as a single LP.
Yeah, there's also a box. And really, we really have to tell the effort that Fred from Sam Records went through. For 1.5 years, there have been no other release than this one, because they found the tapes and they put out such a gorgeous release with this box set or CD or album. It's outstanding. It's outstanding.
When you introduced me to Sam Records, you know, I already had this. I had this when it came out, but I never paid attention. I never heard of Sam Records, and I never looked, because it's like so tiny,
Small.
and I didn't see it really promoted as Sam Records like I see with you know, like the Bobby Jaspar that I got and the Chet Baker, that type of thing. So
yeah, let's go quickly through mine, because I put out also Sam Records. This is a 3-disc first pressing from their Nathan Davis French Paris concert, and this is the only one I put out for today, which is for sure an audiophile recording, and in my opinion, one of the best 5 live albums I have ever listened to.
is that still available?
It is available again as a 3rd pressing. Not €50. It's a 3-disc album, around $50.
Okay. Beautiful,
Highly recommend.
Beautiful cover.
Yeah, it's really a piece of art. Matthew, you don't have it?
I do not have it.
Next week.
Oh God. Hey. Okay. Let's switch gears here a little bit. Again, another one of the best archival releases that came out last year. That's a real archival and a genuine field recording. You're talking about field recordings, and of course, Archival Records with Chris Strachwitz and Alan Lomax, who went out and recorded a lot of roots music in the South and across America. And this record, the complete plantation recordings, Muddy Waters. We're both doing this here. 2-record set. This is recorded 1941-42 for Library of Congress, put out by Analog Productions on this beautiful linen.
It's beautiful.
Talk about field recordings. Look at that. That's how it was recorded. Yeah. Muddy Waters does, there's like little bits of dialogue in between some of the songs between Alan Lomax and Muddy Waters. So you really get a historic, this is a wonderful historic document, but not just that, it's a beautiful archival record and package. And they emulate, this is the way it came out initially when the record first came out, I guess in the 50s, I assume, late 40s, 50s. But beautiful album, and it sounds great, and it's a great listen, great blues. To me,
yeah, but very careful. It's Analog Productions, it's Muddy Waters. It's not audiophile at all. Don't expect a firework. It's the field recording, gorgeous. But
so those of you who want the audiophile Muddy Waters Analog Production record, you need to go with folk music. Folk singer.
Have you heard the leak from there has been a leak from MoFi that the folk singer by Muddy Waters will become a one-step. I can't imagine, because it's in print over at Analog.
And the 45, even the 33 sounds fabulous. I don't need that again. So
no. You're right. Just want to mention when you talk about the folk singer that this rumor is out there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when you talk about field recording, I have a field recording of its own, very special one. And this is the Birds of Venezuela. And the title is a program. On this vinyl, on this record,
is that how it sounds?
Hear birds.
Does it sound like that?
Yeah, it's birds.
No music.
No music. No. He went through the jungle with his equipment and recorded the birds of Venezuela.
So not no turn. So you want to be a rock and roll star, 8 miles high?
No, just birds. and they make so incredible sounds. It's not for the people in the jazz scene, but the electronic scene, the electronic avant-garde scene. They love this record. They love this record. It's highly recommended, highly regarded recording. Very interesting record. Those Birds are real musicians, are real Paul McCartneys.
Or David Crosby and Roger McGuinn, actually, if you're going to talk about the Birds. But that actually reminds me that a lot, if people don't know it about, we talk about Mobile Fidelity. Mobile Fidelity started out as an archival kind of, before they did all this rock and roll and jazz and hi-fi audiophile work, they put out records, sound records of trains, actual choo-choo trains, steam engines, locomotives, and that's how the label started, just doing records of trains.
In Germany, it was a real genre. My business partner, he has a record of the sounds of a Citroën, you know, the car, the French car Citroën.
Yeah, I know Citroën. It goes up like this and down.
Yeah, exactly. And the door, the motor at 80, the motor at 120, the horn, everything on a vinyl.
I had a friend who had a Citroën, a yellow one with a white top.
Yeah, Alain Delon.
Yeah. My light is changing here because I have this natural light window, so I keep moving it, but it's not. Hold on one second. I'm sorry.
No problem. So maybe I'll go just with the record. I can show you something very special again. Kalmykian archaic and Soviet folk.
Wow.
And those two ladies, she plays the guitar and she does the singing, and I'm not kidding. And those are great, great historic folk songs out of this region. It's a very special recording. And for me, this kind of stuff to travel around the world, find, for example, those two women in the former Soviet Union and put their traditional songs on a record. This is, in my opinion, archival at its best.
Absolutely.
It's
fantastic. We could get into the whole, folk, and the label that I grew up with when I was a young lad is None Such Records. Now we all know None Such now because they have, they had Wilco and they have Leroy Anderson and Randy Newman and Ry Cooder, but None Such had the Explorer series, and there was native Andes music of the Peruvian, the Brazilian rainforest, and all these kind of, I have a lot of CDs now, but those used to be a budget label, but it was great archival recordings, None Such Records. And they also did budget classical, but it was it's an incredible label now, but that's the origins. It was part of Elektra Records. My next one is a recording that was released 3 years ago, Les Paul Trio. And I'm sorry.
No problem, Ezzy, no problem.
Les Paul Trio. And these are early recordings from the 20s to the 40s. And Les Paul was one of my favorite guitar players and the man who invented multi-track recording and overdubbed his guitar. And if you listen to the later Les Paul and Mary Ford records from the late 50s, early 60s, you'll hear Mary Ford's vocals literally 4, 5, 6 times in harmony, and his guitar playing. Of course, and what a coincidence, there's a guitar called the Les Paul. But anyway, this is great recordings of the trio from the 20s to 40s, unreleased material. And this is on the ORG Music, Audiophile Recordings, ORG. I don't know anything about ORG. I believe this was a record store day a few years ago. It's a double record in a single sleeve, but fantastic archive.
I've seen that record somewhere.
Yeah,
maybe
it's good.
Maybe a whack-a-mole or over at Michael's, but I've seen that record somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I've shown it, but it's been a while. But I just really like it, and it's perfect for this. So, what a great guitar player. I saw him at, in New York about 10 years before he died. He used to play weekly in the club there. So I'm thankful I saw Les Paul. Okay.
Maybe do another one because I did two because you had your window trouble and
I think we're fine. Okay. Well, this is an amazing collection that my archivist, Amanda, turned me on to a number of years ago. She gave to me as a gift. This is from a wonderful label called the Numero Group. The Numero Group does a lot of archival releases, not all of American, but this is from the late 60s, early 70s, Capsule Records. Capsule Records is an Ohio-based R&B soul thing. They were kind of trying to compete with Motown Records and everything.
okay.
And there's all these singles and rare hits. In a way, it was regional hits. They've
Right.
Numero Group has done archival sets, some box sets, some 2-record sets on psychedelic kind of cowboy music from the 60s, 70s on. They've done one called what's it called? Not the Triton, the Triton, I think, early surfy psychedelic stuff. So they do these archive collections of regions of music, of genres like, Ohio or, again, Ohio Soul Records. And they talk about the whole history of the label, how it started, who started it. And because there are a lot of things, America's, as you know, is such a large country. There were a lot of regional hits and these small labels putting out records that, I'd never heard of this stuff growing up until I was given this. And it's just really funky, great stuff that, if it had distribution and had been launched by some of the major labels, might have been bigger hits than regional hits. So this is the Capsule label, Eccentric Soul #1. There's a series of these, and Numero Group does a lot of great archival releases.
So this is archival, even approved by the archivist as an archival record.
Exactly, and that's a copy that the archivist gave me as a gift about 5 years ago.
Mezzi, please do me a favor, do another one because I have an idea. I want to put one record in. You do another one?
Okay, I wanted to show one record. I've showed a lot of music from Analog Africa. Analog Africa is one of my favorite labels now. So I just picked this one for now, a Senegal 70, and this is a collection of African groups from Senegal. This is an amazing label by Sami Ben Rajeb, a German label. And he, from Germany, goes around the world, South America and Africa, and curates these things. There's African Scream Contest, which I've shown many times. Those 2 volumes. I didn't want to show that again because I show it all the time. I pretty much pick up any release by them.
Gorgeous cover.
You can get them through Bandcamp, directly through them. And what happens is, they FedEx them to you within 4 or 5 days out of Germany. So you get them within a week from Germany.
How much do you pay for shipment for a FedEx from Germany?
Usually, I do buy the one-offs. So as new releases come out, I think I pay about $30 to $35 for a double record, and maybe another $10 to $15 for shipping. No, I think I pay $40 to $45, including shipping for a double thing. And I keep thinking, hey, from Germany these days, that's not going to take 2 months. That's worth it. But a lot of times when I've been trying to build my collection, I've ordered, 5, 6, 8 records from them, of course, because then the shipping goes down. So I'm having light issues there. Now I'm in the shadows today. So your turn.
I put out something. I hope it was on your channel. There was a discussion. I don't know if it was in your comments or in the video you talked about, or I've read it in comments. And it was about, is there a music genre, gay disco music? Was it on your channel? I don't know.
That's disco music is gay disco music.
Yeah, but this is from a very famous Hamburg gay club in the 80s or late 70s, 80s. And this is gay disco music. And
isn't every disco club in Germany in the 80s a gay?
I hope not. I've been there. No, not all. Not all. No.
Nothing wrong
But
with that.
of course, yeah. But, and this is, for me, also an archival record because it's the most important songs of this gay club in Hamburg. And it's a gorgeous listening. Gorgeous. And for me, this is also archival in a way. There's also a second one they put out because this one was very successful. It's this one.
You know, that whole scene, I mean, just not to get off on it, I shouldn't, that's wrong way of putting it, excuse me. But throughout the 80s in San Francisco, obviously, San Francisco is a mecca of gay clubs, and it has been since the 70s and 60s, actually. And a lot of us used to go, like you said, all these gay dance clubs, and the gay dance club started having live music in some cases, and the whole new wave punk thing was happening. So sometimes they would split it up, and you'd have like, 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever, 4 hours of these dance things, and then a live new wave punk band like The Cure would come through, and then when they finished, it would go back to the dancing till 4, 5, 6 in the morning. So that was a big part of the South of Market, Folsom Street area scene.
And here, at least here in Germany, the best woman you found in the gay clubs,
right, was a man.
Oh,
I get it. Right. Of course, yeah. We digress here. Archiving. Back to archiving. I'm showing this, and I've showed this. I've showed this several times. I did a series on Raymond Scott. Raymond Scott was a musician, electronic musician pioneer, a composer, an inventor. He early worked and got the Moog, Robert Moog's Moog synthesizer. He composed he had a jazz group that did things for soundtracks. Some of his compositions were used by Carl Stalling in the Warner Brothers cartoons, like the old Bugs Bunny cartoons of the 40s and 50s. Carl Stalling later on got a gig in the 70s, I believe, working for Motown Records to try to develop these synthesizers and electronic things to do a division, which kind of worked them for 10 years, and it kind of fell apart. He also did a lot of commercials, American radio and television commercials in the 50s and 60s. Oh. This is an overview of music composed by Raymond Scott, New Plastic Sounds and Electric Abstractions. Manhattan Research Inc. was the name of his company. Some of it's commercial, some of it's kitschy, out there. Big fan of his. This is a archival. This is a Music on Vinyl release. It came out in 2017. I originally got this CD in 2000. I've had the CD for 20 years. But
we're talking early electronics here, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah. Some of it is very commercial. Some of it is out there. Some of it's just blips and blops. And I did show earlier this year, a reissue that they did, or an issue they did of his actual commercials and jingles. So Raymond Scott.
So maybe that fits very well into your suggestion. Maybe you know this young lady, Paulina Oliveros.
I do not.
San Francisco, early electronics. She was on the university over in San Francisco. And there is a Paulina Oliveros archival institute, and they are putting out her early electronic efforts. And those are also very interesting, very intellectual editions. And in my opinion, this is archival as well, because there is an artist which is not so very well known, but within in a scene or whatever, very, very highly regarded. And they go through the effort and said, we have to put this artist out. We have to show the world that this artist has done its stuff. and I like those efforts. And Paulina Oliveros is a gorgeous artist, early electronic, and very worth your time. Really try it out sometimes. You probably can stream it. You don't have to buy the vinyl. But you, Messi, with your love to San Francisco, she's quite an important figure in that scene.
I miss that whole scene there.
Happens.
Yeah. I just picked one of these just because everyone always shows Neil Young at Massey Hall, and I didn't want to show that again because but Neil Young Archive is an important archive in my opinion. His own artist archive, and this is Roxy Music. Excuse me, not Roxy. Neil Young Tonight's the Night Live. He does Tonight's the Night and records from that period at the Roxy, which is one of the clubs on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. And I've been to Roxy a number of times, but obviously I never saw Neil Young there. He's been putting out this whole series of the Neil Young Archives, NYA. It's hard to see here. Obviously, Massey Hall is the one that everyone talks about recorded in Canada. But this is great. This is more like electric and more the dirgy stuff he was doing at this point. And I pretty much buy all of the archive releases.
But you didn't buy the Greendale, the new one, you told me.
Yeah, I don't even know. I don't love that record. I have a CD of the original, and I'm kind of slowing down on some of this whole thing. They just announced it's a CD box of the Neil Young Archive 2. They put 15 years ago, whenever it was, Neil Young 1, and it's all CDs. The problem for me is that I think 8 or 10 of the CDs are the actual albums from the second period that I have on CD, I have on vinyl, and for a couple of CDs of live and outtakes, at this point, I'm not going to listen to them. But the Neil Young completist in me would have bought that 10 years ago. But this just kind of
let me ask you, please, because I wasn't aware of that. So this doesn't came up in its time.
This never came out originally. No, a lot of these live records.
Okay, I didn't know that.
He's putting out all his records in order. He has been, as audiophile pressings. The Harvest is beautiful. Tonight's the Night, On the Beach, and there's been those box sets also, or individually. But he's also been putting out Massey Hall when that came out. That had never been released in its day. That was an archival release that never came out back in the 70s. Partly because a lot of that stuff on that recording was going to be on his next album that would become Harvest. So they never released that. There's this record. There's the Live at the Fillmore East of Neil Young.
Cellar Door.
Yes. Colorado also. There was Colorado new? No, maybe not. But there's a lot of these.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So that is the reason why I didn't put out one Neil Young.
Right. Well, I just put this to represent all that stuff. He is, I mean, obviously Psychedelic Pill is an actual record of his. So that's new. That's different. That came out in its time. But a lot of these live recordings, he has all these tapes, and they're definitely archival releases.
Yeah. So I show 3 now, because in a way they belong together. And those are from a British label, and they are called the Devon Folkloric Tapes. Those are 10-inch handmade editions from various topics, sometimes field recordings, sometimes medieval songs performed by an artist. On another one, you have a secretary, and she reads through a list of things they ordered. Very obscure. Only the British people can put out those kind of recordings.
Well, it sounds like conceptual. It sounds like conceptual performance art almost.
Yeah, in a way. Go to their website. Very interesting releases.
You put that on when you have people over for drinks?
Sometimes depends on the people. You know, I did that. I do that when my father comes. I put on very strange songs. What is it? Why are you always with the
Why
peace
are you
sign?
trying to get rid of him, or what is?
No, he knows me, and then I put something nice on, and he's happy.
That's a good one. I'm going to go to my only Beatle connection pick, and this is where we go back at the beginning of this conversation, where you know, my friend the archivist says, you know, it's not just really having an album with outtakes, and outtakes. Is that archival? Is that archival? Yoko Ono has been a pretty decent curator of the John Lennon estate and recordings, and they did put out a beautiful box set around Imagine on CD that has the stems and the outtakes and the demos and the works in progress. But I'm going to show this because this does not have the actual Imagine album, but it came out during that issue last year or 2 years ago of Imagine. And it is Imagine John Lennon, but they are 10 songs. He takes the entire album of Imagine, but these are all demos and alternate versions. So is this considered an archive? I'm calling it an archive. You are not calling it an archive. These are outtakes that we want to save and archival. Now, there are things that I can show. In fact, I'll show it back to back here because it fits. Is this. Now, this is Bob Dylan 1965-66, the same type of thing. This is the vinyl version that has, this is the best of the cutting edge. I do have the complete, is it 18 CDs, I believe, of the cutting edge. It's every take he did in 1965 and 1966. Of the, you know, Blonde on Blonde, Highway 61, and the 3 albums around that time, acoustic versions, that has everything. This is the best of that. So you might have on that version 15 versions or 20 versions of Like a Rolling Stone, and you hear the progress and the different versions, and that kind of stuff drives some people crazy. But I like, as an archaeologist, in a way, a music archaeologist, and I would say a music, you know, archivist, of archiving this progression, diving in, listening to how the song, the final song happened, you know, how it became that. Now, sure, someone's going to argue that this, you're going to argue, and if Amanda's watching, she'll tell me that's not an archival recording. So be it, for the sake.
Yeah, but the frontiers are floating. You can't say this is, and of course it is archival in a way, no doubt about it. I just want to tease you.
And of course they use, you know, vintage sleeves, which don't actually reflect Bob Dylan at the time. So it's you're making, in this case, you're making an artistic decision. You're showing sort of these vintage, updated, you know, reimagined sleeves of Columbia Records, but you're showing this beautiful book of, you know, what it took to make these records. To me, this is amongst my favorite of the Bootleg series. And to me, the 2 artists, and they're both from the same people at Columbia Legacy, that have been the most successful, and that I can't wait to that everyone comes out, is the Bob Dylan Bootleg series, and when they were doing the CD Silver Spine complete Miles Davis series, like the complete Bitches Brew, the complete Gil Evans, and the complete second quintet, and the like. And I just think these are magnificent. So I will fight to the death to call these archival releases. Not to the death, but, you know.
Next to it. Okay. Yeah, my last choice. Oh, excuse me. I thought.
No, I just showed that up. Your last one? Oh, you only have one more?
Yeah, but you can go on. I comment on yours, no problem. Okay. One of my most ugliest box sets. The outer package is terrible. So this is a box set about field recordings, and field recordings in all its variants. It comes with a beautiful book, very interesting book, which goes through the meaning and the development and what are field recordings. And if you're into field recording, this is the box set to go. You have
And what's the
numerous
music or what's the sounds?
traffic.
Oh, so it's like sound effects records almost.
No, they just go through the world, put a microphone on I don't know the English term, you know, when traffic crosses.
Yeah, ambient. I mean, it's ambient records, recordings, live recordings.
Or in fabric halls, or in a mall, or in the forest, or a river, or animals, everything like this.
Do you play that one when your father comes over?
To the flux, and long, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 18 minutes.
And you play that when your father comes over as well?
He likes it.
Yeah.
He likes it.
I have two more. So one is, again, I'm sticking with my theory of outtakes and demos and alternate things. And I'm showing this is And or Again. This is Skip Spence, who was a member of Moby Grape and who went crazy, not unlike Pink Floyd's Syd Barrett, where he went a little crazy and nutty and acid casualty. And he went on Columbia, he made this record, And or, the original album was called And or, this is And or Again. The original album bombed. It's almost, you would call it psych folk, which wasn't even a thing then. It's disjointed, it's minimal. The indie crowd, the minimal crowd, the alternative crowd, the Americana crowd embraced on this album years later. There was another album called Another Or, which has people, everyone from Beck to Robert Plant to a lot of other artists covering this entire album. This is on Modern Harmonic, which is a division of Sundazed, and it has everything recorded in 1968 for this album. All the outtakes, all the versions. This is a 3-record set.
Wow.
I just think it's an amazing archival look at one album. Now, you and I have showed in our box set video things like the Prince and Tom Petty, where you take one album and those are archival too, but we're not really showing box sets here.
Yeah.
But again, we could go back and forth and we could debate this, and this is just our opinions of something that's very archival. And I guess lastly, I'm going to show this as a representation, because I think I'm going to be doing at some point a video on BBC sessions. You know, the BBC is a very famous archive of music and recordings. Mm-hmm. And it started again with this beautiful light I'm getting. Like, I got like a cloud coverage on natural light, and then the sun keeps peeking through. Usually I get that beautiful, in photography, photographers don't like high sunlight. They like overcast.
Not at all.
You get like a soft box of light. Mm-hmm. And having worked with photographers, I know this. Like, this is really shitty, messed up light here for Mazzy today, but that's okay. But the BBC.
Not a beauty contest here, Mazzy.
Exactly, right. There's there was a law or a rule or a union rule, whatever the equivalent was in the 60s. The reason we have all these great recordings like of the Beatles and the Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin and T-Rex and the others that have come out over the last 20, 30 years of the BBC recordings is you couldn't go in and just play live or mouth your record. You'd have to go in and either beforehand or during, you'd have to do recordings with their engineers and record your songs. And that would be the songs they use on the BBC recordings. So this is a Billy Bragg record that came out last year, I believe, or 2 years ago, 2019, so last year. And this is the first time the BBC, Billy Bragg, he's a folk punk singer that came out in the early 80s. electric guitar, very social, protest. He worked with on the Woody Guthrie lyrics with Wilco on those albums, socialist and for the workers' rights. These are all the BBC recordings from 1983 to 2019 that he did. So obviously you see the progression of his age over the years. 3 records, an amazing set. I
Right.
love all the versions. And the thing about these BBC records, they actually sound really good because they were recorded in BBC studios. You're not obviously
Bowie
going
at
to
the
have
beat.
Beatles
You
at the
have that?
Beat.
Bowie at the beat is
Yeah,
great.
that's a nickname. And I think I
Mm.
want to do one of all mine. I don't have the definitive of everything, but between compact discs and LPs, I have a lot. But I think the archive at the BBC, this is now something talking about an institution, archives at one institution that are amazing. And it's great that these artists are releasing these.
Maybe it's a stupid questions, but I really don't know. Is there something Beatles at the BBC or at the
Yep.
Beat?
Well,
Yep.
there's 2 volumes of the Beatles of the BBC that came out. I don't know, I'm
Mm.
thinking 10 years apart, 15 years apart, give or take, on vinyl and CDs.
Mm.
However, I have a massive CD bootleg of the Beatles at the BBC, and to this day, it's not all out there. And of course, completists wish they had put it out there, all of them. So every track isn't out there, but I think they're 2 volumes of 3 records each, as I recall.
Beautiful set.
Yeah, it's a lovely set,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So I have other things that I'm not going to show them because you could really go down this rabbit hole of unreleased music, and maybe we'll do another one someday of this in a different format. But
Yeah, that was really, maybe we can talk for the end of the video about it, how this video came up, because I asked you, is archival a real term? And say yes. And then, come on, let's do a video about it. And then we say, okay, we do it tomorrow. And you say, okay, tomorrow is fine. And then I thought, okay, which one? And suddenly I really had to compress the things I took, because that's archival, that's archival, that's two. It's a vast topic. It's
right.
huge.
Well,
it's huge.
there was one artist that I was talking to Amanda this morning about this, and there's an artist, Rodriguez. I don't know if you know Rodriguez, and there's a great documentary you should watch if out there, and I think most of you might have seen it, Searching for Sugarman. And this is this Detroit, I believe it's Detroit artist, I think, who made these records in the 70s, early 70s, and he was kind of like a electric, soulful Bob Dylan, African American or Indian artist, Indian. Oh God, I'm embarrassed now because I think I blew his ethnicity. Who made these records and made 3 albums? I'm thinking 2, 3 albums, and then disappeared. The documentary happened about 10, 12 years ago. They were looking for him, searching for him, because his records were huge.
I think I've heard about
in South America. They were huge, selling in the millions, unbeknownst to him or his American label that doesn't exist anymore. This documentary kind of revitalized him. At the end of the documentary, they show him performing live in America, came back, and his records have now been issued. I think Light in the Attic possibly is the label that has issued a lot of them. But there is one of the soundtrack of that movie, Searching for Sugarman, which is kind of an archival record. I only have one of the reissues. And to me, I didn't want to include it because it's really just a reissue of that album. It's not this archival thing. But in a way, that's the ultimate thing. You're not just, you found this lost tape, you found this lost artist. That's searching for a human. Is that an archival? That's part of the discussion. And it is pretty amazing. It's looking for, it's looking for that missing link in man going in
So in other words, if the archivist hasn't put it on such a short leash, we would have had much more records today.
Well, see, okay. I was trying to plan this, but it didn't happen today. There's a scene in Woody Allen's Annie Hall, where Woody and Diane Keaton are standing in line and they're talking about things. And the guy behind him is talking about media and culture. And he's like pontificating about. I teach a class at Columbia, and I know about Marshall McLuhan, and media and is the medium is the I can't remember the exact quote, whatever. And Woody Allen says, "You know nothing about Marshall McLuhan. How you ever got, you know?" And he goes, "I happen to teach this class," and he goes behind the poster, and the actual Marshall McLuhan comes out and says, "You know nothing about my work. How you even got to teach a class, media cultures beyond my comprehension." And you kind of wish you had someone. So I was hoping that she would come in and say, "You two assholes know nothing about.
You know nothing, you know shit.
I have a degree in archiving. I know about archiving." But that was fun. So there you go. So we'll do these more. But I think that was kind of loosey goosey today. I don't know if that's a
I
term.
hope so. Messi, don't push the wrong button now, please.
I won't. But anyway, thank you for watching. And
This
we'll
was number
do
3. So, das war der dritte Teil unserer hoffentlich beliebten und schönen Reihe über Musik sprechen. Messi hat wieder traumhaft schöne Editionen ausgepackt. Ich hoffe, meine waren auch interessant für euch. Und heute hören wir einfach mal in der deutschen Sprache auf, weil ich muss mich halt immer auf das Englische konzentrieren und kann es doch eigentlich ein bisschen besser auf Deutsch. Obwohl ich natürlich im Englischen mein Bestes gebe, freue ich mich, dass ihr wieder so lange dabei geblieben seid und wir sehen uns bei der nächsten Ausgabe. Danke.
what he said.